ask the question, what are the service readiness requirements for franchise dealers, and what does the typical OEM require of a dealership to be considered service ready? And we're going to talk a little bit about how a OEM measures that. The second panel is going to be aftermarket repair service readiness, a discussion with respected shop owners and managers, educators, and service support specialists. And this group is going to address the questions of the state of aftermarket service readiness today. If there were some service readiness requirements for an aftermarket shop, kind of like an OEM requires of their dealers, what would those requirements be? OEM service support resources in the aftermarket. I think everybody in this room knows there's a lot of stuff out there, but the question is, are they utilized adequately? And then finally, aftermarket shops that are service ready for their customers. How pervasive are these shops? Are there enough of them out there to meet consumer demand today? And will there be enough of them out there in the future? So this is our segue to the first panel.
Yep. Did you want to introduce the panelists, or you want me to just bring them up, introduce them?
Well, you know, this is your panel,
okay,
so I'm going to let you introduce
all right. I
them.
thought you had some formal introduction or something. All right, first panelist, then Mark Saxenberg. Go take a seat there, and we'll bring up the rest of them. Bob Stewart with General Motors. Bob, thank you very much. Kelly Geist with Subaru is joining us today. And Jim Von Air with Nissan. Thank you. Can I have a hand for our 4 OEM panelists?
So, Skip, before we start, one of the questions that I asked all of these panelists was, you know, who do you work for? What do you do today? And how many years of experience do you have in the industry? And I think that we're going to let everybody on this panel speak for themselves on those things, you know, those 3 questions. But one of the reasons I asked that last question, you know, how long have you been doing this in this industry, is I wanted to get a sense of the collective experience that you're going to hear from today. And essentially what I came up with is that from the panel members that you saw on that first slide, you have well over 200 years of collective experience, direct relevant experience to automotive service and repair. So the folks here today have been doing this for a while.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And Mark, you have the first set of slides on this deck here. So if you would like to kick off the presentation on, and I'm very excited about this because I was intrigued when Mark and I first started talking about this topic, that we would get to hear what the franchise agreements essentially are requiring of their dealers when it comes to service readiness. So what kind of education do they need? What kind of tool investment do they need? Because that's something that is not spelled out for the aftermarket. And we all hear a lot of confusion out there as to what may be needed, where a shop owner may need to go. So there may be a role in that, because remember, the role for NASTF is to close the gaps in tools, service information, and also in education and service readiness. So, Mark, go ahead.
Thank you, Skip. So, service readiness, what is it? Why is it important? Well, it's the act of having received the service training and having access to the service information, the tools, and the parts that are necessary to perform any diagnosis, any repair, any adjustment that might be required to support a product, but most importantly, in advance of the time that that product arrives. So, if you're not prepared, if you don't have access to the information and the tools, you can't call yourself service ready. And from an automaker's perspective, service readiness is one of the most important functions of service technology groups and automakers. And the preparations for retail sale of the vehicles that we sell begin more than a year, sometimes well more than a year in advance of the day of the first sale of those vehicles. So that when a vehicle first arrives on a car dealer's lot to be sold, the technicians have to be equipped with the knowledge, the information, the software, and the tools to perform any action that might be required to support that vehicle. Car might roll off a transport and has to be fixed immediately. You have to be service ready for that vehicle and for that customer. So we've kind of developed this model at Toyota of what we're calling 360 degrees service support. So, you know, what are the real keys to successful auto repair in the 21st century and a 21st century business model? And based on Toyota's experience, it all boils down to ensuring that every technician who's going to perform any particular type of a repair, and different technicians do different repairs, so there's different levels of service readiness depending on what you do. But every technician that's going to perform any particular type of repair has to be service ready to perform that repair. The key elements of service readiness begin with developing technicians who have the knowledge and the skills to use the service support resources that we provide. This means that they already have the training and product knowledge to use their resources and to expedite an accurate repair. Again, before the customer arrives for service. Today, there are virtually no diagnostics on a late model car. There's no repairs that can be performed without a factory equivalent scan tool, factory equivalent information, and every day the number of vehicles that have things that aren't in alignment with that rule are getting fewer and fewer. So considering the complexity of some repairs and the lack of frequency of many repairs. So a lot of repairs are really complex these days, and it's not like you do them every day, and this is especially true in an independent shop environment. And with the pressure to fix cars fast and considering access to technical support is often the difference between fixing it right the first time and making a profit on a repair, I think it's important to understand that service readiness is not achieved with service information alone. We all have to understand that vehicles are too complicated today to attempt to diagnose and repair them without all of the appropriate resources. And finally, technicians can't succeed without a commitment to 100% service readiness for vehicles that their customers expect them to support. So if you look at that 360-degree model there, you got to understand the product. It's training and product knowledge. You got to have access to the right information. You got to have access to the right tools. You need to have access to some sort of a technical assistance support system. You need to have access to factory service parts or just the right service parts for that matter. And probably most important, because cars change so quickly today, you must have the commitment to grow and learn, as everybody here does, or else you wouldn't be here. So just quickly going through some of the things that we have learned through survey in the Service Technology Program Committee. In 2011, in cooperation with IDC Manufacturing Insights, we conducted a service readiness survey of approximately 1,600 service technicians, about 1,200 working in dealerships, and the balance were working in independent repair facilities. The portion of the survey that's indicated on this particular slide was focused on technicians' experience servicing hybrid and advanced technology vehicles, and it attempted to reveal the gaps between current business models and real-world necessities to fix a car right the first time. This slide describes a high-level overview of the service readiness results. So when one looks, so normally this slide is animated, but what we looked at was technicians faced with a service event that he or she is not familiar with, and that needs to be researched at the time of repair. You know, what's the frequency of that? The shop does not have access to adequate, up-to-date information or training. What's the frequency of that? And the other major question here, shop does not have a scan tool capability capable of supporting a needed function. We also looked at whether a shop had a tool, but because they only had one or two and there's a bunch of techs that needed that tool, you know, was the tool there when the technician needed it? The shop has the tool, but the technician needed to research the information and how to use it. And essentially what we found was that in general, independent techs often lack a scan tool that they need, or they lack the information or training that they need. In the dealership world, they got the scan tool, but they're waiting in line to use it, so they lose productivity. So the bottom line of this particular slide is that we're not service ready in our dealers, and we're not service ready in our independent shops, and we're a little less service ready in our independent shops today. This slide depicts another service readiness issue associated with current business models and scan tool access. Automakers generally require franchise dealers to purchase and maintain all of the tools necessary to be service ready. The requirement, however, is rarely scalable to the size of the dealership, as a result, some dealers don't invest in enough tool and equipment to support their whole dealership. They essentially shoot themselves in the foot. They don't want to spend any money up front, but it costs them a lot of money by not spending that money up front. So I won't go into a great deal of detail here, but the bottom line is we have service readiness issues everywhere. And it's not rocket science to figure out what it is we need to do about it. We just need to do it. So with that, we're going to turn things over to Bob Stewart. And Bob, would you introduce yourself, your name, where you work, what you do, and how long you've been doing it, please?
All right. Bob Stewart, as the slide says, from General Motors. I've been in the automotive industry for 24 years, even though it doesn't look like it. I did start when I was 16 in a used car dealer, reconditioning used cars, and moved on to a aftermarket shop, and then moved into a dealership, and then moved on to General Motors. And my primary function at General Motors today is to make sure that the aftermarket has the same equivalent information available that the dealers have. So I bridge that gap. That's why I fit in with NASTF, to make sure that the aftermarket has everything that our dealers have. And the topic that I was asked to talk about today was our dealership technician training and what we require for them to be trained, and where we recruit students to become trained, to become dealer technicians, which is a challenge in the industry. Basically, technician's capability is a competitive advantage for GM. We understand if a technician is capable to repair our vehicles and our vehicles are repaired right, we're going to sell more cars. It all goes back to selling more vehicles. And our vice president of our organization, which is focused on after sales, his slogan is nothing happens until that car's sold. So that cycle all starts when that first car is sold. If the customer has a good experience, we're going to sell them another vehicle. We start right in the high schools with the AES program. Then we moved on to a GM program, which is ASEP, which is a 2-year college program. And then we have a training program for our dealership technicians that works all the way up to a world class. And I'll get a little bit more into what all of those are. It's kind of another graphic of the program. But as you see, it starts at the bottom with the AES program, which allows students to job shadow inside the dealership with dealership technicians, see if they really want to work as a dealer technician, get a little bit of experience as kind of a co-op student there. And also at the same time, we work with the high school program to make sure that they're getting some automotive experience and training there at a ground level. Then we move on to our post-secondary, which we typically work with community colleges with an associate program and a program called ASEP. And it's a specific GM training. It takes the basic fundamental GM training classes that we teach our technicians that didn't go through the program, and teaches them over an 8-week period, and then they work 8 weeks in the dealership, and they go back and forth until they make their way through the 2-year program. And then we move up to what we call our master technician certification and our world-class certification. I'll go a little bit more into those. But basically, we have continuing education in this business because technology evolves, and that program addresses that. Here's kind of our ASEP program. We started that back in 1979. It's a partnership between a community college, GM, and the dealership, so we all have to work together to make the program work. Currently, there's 60 schools with over 1,000 students participating in the program. 14 schools in Canada, 16 in China, 1 in Ecuador, and we're exploring whether we should open one in Mexico, 1 or 2 in Mexico. It's, like I said, it's a 2-year associate's program in automotive technology. They're exclusively taught GM repair training classes, the same one our dealership technicians take if they haven't went to a college program. It's based on a NASTF standard, so any school that we're doing business with is going to be a NASTF standard school. The cycle, as I mentioned, is 8 weeks on, 8 weeks off, co-op with the student. The student's responsible for finding their own sponsor, finding their own sponsored dealership, but we do help because we understand the value in the program, and we're struggling, like many others, to get qualified technicians in to our dealerships to repair these vehicles, so it's advantageous to us to make sure that we have students in the program. We need to feed the program. Requires all the basics, math, English, and science, which, you know, automotive repair is a lot of math and science, so those are key things. And one of the things that they've added in is English. People struggle with that, but you have to be able to communicate. Upon graduation, they get about 85% of the training that a dealer tech would get if they took the full program. So they just need to finish that last 15% to get what we call STS total, which is Service Technology Standards, which means the Service Technology College is what GM calls the training program, to get the full standards. We break it into different categories. As you'll see here, there's 13 different categories, 3 of them being body and collision type categories, number 11 and number 10. Both of those are taught by ICAR. We don't actually do those in-house, and the paint ones are taught with paint supply companies, whoever's PPG or companies like that, Sherwin-Williams. And then we have an advanced technology section for the hybrids. As you see, it's kind of broken up, the categories, very similar to ASE certification categories, because one of the components of training is ASE certification. I was asked kind of how much time does it take for a technician to become trained within the GM program. You start down at the bottom. We include 20 hours of training, which is a WBT and a VCT. Wouldn't be a manufacturer if we didn't have acronyms. What the heck is a WBT and a VCT? WBT is a web-based training course, and a VCT is a virtual classroom training course. So that's kind of like a WebEx remote type training course is the virtual training class, and a web-based training course is a course that you just take online, read, have some simulations in it, and you just go through and answer the questions. So there's about 22 hours there of that, and then it moves, and this here setup is just an example of the electrical area. You can be a master in each one of the areas, and then to become world class, you have to be a master in 9 of the 10 areas to be able to get that, plus you have to take an evaluation test. So the electrical category has an additional 46 hours worth of training with VCTs and WBTs, but it also ends in ILTs, so we got another acronym. That's instructor-led training, so now we have the classroom training. Kind of the GM approach now with training is what they call blended learning. So we start you out with the web-based stuff, the virtual classroom, and then work you into the instructor-led training. And then Master Tech Certification has an additional 8 hours worth of training and includes a hands-on assessment. And what the hands-on assessment is within a classroom we will set up training scenarios, faults within vehicles, and the technician has to go through and diagnose those and pass them and diagnose them properly within a certain amount of time to actually pass those training classes. So we evaluate and assess to make sure that they have the knowledge to repair electrical type failures. So world-class training is a total of roughly 600 hours of total training and includes a total of 8 categories. So they have to have all of these for all 8 categories to be able to become world-class. I asked the question of our training group, how many students do we have within training right now? They said roughly 29,000 students are within the GM training system that are currently active. And then the second part to the question was how many actually make it to world-class technician? It's a little bit less than 5% of them make it there. And to Mark's point and his, you know, we incentivize them, we need to get them there, And the way we incentivize our technicians to get trained actually is through the service manager. The service manager that gets their technicians to 100% trained usually gets some type of trip somewhere. So you have to get something to incentivize them to get it done. That's all I have. I think the next one up is Kelly Geist from Subaru North America.
Thank you.
Kelly, what you do and how long you've been doing this in the industry?
Okay. My official title is Service Engineering Manager. What that involves is a lot of different activities. One of the things I'm responsible for is special tools and equipment, which includes diagnostic tools, hard tools, and any kind of advanced diagnostics equipment. I've been with Subaru going on 10 years. I've been in the industry about 25 years. Spent time with Toyota, BMW, and now Subaru. So I got a kind of broad spectrum of different parts of the industry. So what I was tasked to do is explain a little bit about what our requirements are for a dealer. And that would be a new dealer going into business or even a buy-sell dealer, what they have to have for tools and equipment. The first section I want to talk about is special tools. The first part of that is diagnostic equipment. The Subaru diagnostic equipment is required. It's one per dealer. It encompasses a CF19 Toughbook laptop, diagnostic interface, wireless color laser printer, wireless access point that allows the technicians to access directly on the notebook service information. Also has a Subaru managed firewall. That way it is a secured network. Nobody can get on the network. It's strictly for those devices. And then last is a customized user interface, and that's actually on the laptop itself. It runs Windows, but it has an interface that is unique to us. It has basically quick links to all the different functions that a technician would use, looking up information about a car, looking up service information. They can even enter an electronic technician report, what we call an EQMR, which is a quality monitoring report. They can do all that from the notebook. I don't have it here on the slide, but the cost for this for a dealer varies based on how they choose to have the equipment. The laptop is a rental program. The interface can either be leased or purchased, and because of that, the fees range monthly from $400 to $500 per dealer. That includes their licensing fees, rental fees, and any maintenance fees. If the unit is still under warranty, they're all covered with a loaner program. Moving on from diagnostics, we'll go into the actual required special toolkit. This is your mechanical tools, bushing tools, drivers, things for working engine, suspension, transmissions. Currently, we have approximately 400 tools in the program. That list is reviewed every 5 years to make sure that we have the tools to repair everything that's 5 years old and newer. And because at that point, as it was pointed out earlier in the presentations, that's where it starts to go down. More of the work is taken to the aftermarket shops. And that's why we review the tool list to make sure we're not overburdening the dealers with the number of tools that we have in the program. The current estimated cost in a complete toolkit, this would be a new dealer going in place, is approximately $50,000. That includes all the hard tools and a couple of electronic tools, which I'll cover here in a minute. They are shipped automatically to dealers every year. The additional tools are required for new models, and that approximately 20 tools per model year, depending if we have an all-new model launch or it's just a carryover and then there's not as many tools, depending on what we're launching at any particular time. Some of the required shop equipment that we do require is we have a Subaru-approved on-car brake lathes. We recognize 2 manufacturers' systems currently, the ProCut 9.0 or higher, and then a Hunter OCL 400 or higher. That is required. If a dealer does not have it, they will not get paid for any rotary servicing under warranty. And that is a franchise agreement item, and that's why it's in there. The second one we have is a GSP 9700 Hunter tire balancer. This is their advanced diagnostic balancer that has road force variation measurements, and that is required for any dealers that have a 5-year unit in operation higher than 1,000. So it's basically just a judgment of their market area and what the customers that they have for a customer base. And so we calculate that every year, and if a dealer goes above and below that, they either have to add it or they no longer have to have it, but obviously usually they're going to keep it. Midtronics battery tester. This is one of the electronic items I said that's actually included in the toolkit. It's in the special tools, but it's really a piece of electronic test equipment. It's a dedicated battery charger. It's developed with Midtronics. It does diagnostics and charging, and then we also provide the dealer with a handheld battery tester. Similar to a lot of other OEMs, it produces warranty test codes, and those are needed for submitting warranty claims on OE batteries. Last, we do have a list of some general shop equipment for each dealer that requires lifts, 10-ton press, things that we feel are appropriate for a dealer to have. Can't give you really good range on that, but it can be anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 depending on the level of equipment that a dealer chooses to purchase. We do not have a set amount. I think Mark had mentioned that we have a problem with dealers not having enough tools, and we have the situation with our dealers right now where they've been in business a long time, all of a sudden volumes are going up, they haven't invested in new equipment or additional copies of equipment, so they have more than one technician could be working on something at a time. Scan tool is a good example, as mentioned earlier. One thing I was asked to also discuss a little bit about future diagnostic tool development. We're currently developing our next generation of diagnostic tool, and there's been a lot of discussions about right to repair and things like that, and it is influencing, I think, everybody's next generation of equipment. Our current device will exceed, well, its lifespan, I guess, will be exceeded in the models on the 2015 model year. So for the 2016 model year, there will be new requirements, and we'll have to have a new tester at that time. So that's our current goal and our target to get a unit out. It'll consist of a new interface box with a multi-channel oscilloscope built in. That's for some more advanced diagnostics that we believe are necessary with some of the new technologies, be it hybrid, direct injection, things like that. Right now, we're also looking at the cloud-based systems versus PC-based. Right now, PC-based is pretty common in the industry. A lot of manufacturers looking at cloud-based, including us. That way, it's more of a subscription-type service, both for the dealers and for the aftermarket, and it's something we're looking into. And if it's possible, that would be in this release. Also, we're looking at wireless communication between the PC and the interface box. In the past, it's always been a USB connection or an Ethernet connection. And as we know, those things wear out, break, and it's not the best for a shop environment. We feel that a unit on the car then can communicate to the laptop would be a better solution. And lastly, the protocol. We are looking at what alternatives are going to be available with the right to repair. It may be the J2534 protocol. There's other ones. I think you mentioned one about earlier. The
ISO
ISO
22900?
Yes. That's an option, and we're going to review all those before we decide what exactly is the best for the industry and where it's going. That's all I had. I guess next up is Jim Von Air from Nissan. All yours.
All mine.
Thanks, Kelly.
So do you want to introduce me? I've been around so long I don't remember what I gave you.
So, you guys all know Jim Von Air's the guy with the hair, right? So Jim, just a little bit, we all know you work for Nissan. What do you do? How long you been there, and how long you been in this industry?
Wow. A long time. I guess going back a long time ago, I started at the age of 10. Fixing my dad's farm equipment. And of course, I thank him for never charging me to get it fixed after I played with it. But that was a long time ago, actually 1975. I started my endeavor trying to fix Nissan. Started out with GM, but I couldn't handle the qualifications. So I moved over to Nissan. Couldn't get through Bob's courses that they had back in '75. But so I spent about 10 years working as a Nissan technician out there, trying to make a living at it. And I guess after 10 years, my body said, boy, I got to find something else to do. So I got lucky, went to work for one of Nissan's Tier 1 suppliers, Calsonic, North America, heating, air conditioning. Took over their field quality investigations, warranty analysis, all of that kind of stuff. Did that for 15 years and finally ended up working for Nissan as a technical specialist. And I guess 13 years ago, 11 years ago, they handed me our diagnostic system and our service information and said, here, you do this for a while. Okay, what is this? But being a technician, I kind of knew what I wanted to do with it. I knew what technicians needed. I've lived there fixing things all my life. And I said, I think I can help at least our dealership technicians and the rest of the market try to give them what they need to make our customers happy. And I've been doing that for the last 12, 13 years. So today, I'm going to talk about our dealership service readiness, but more importantly, the technician side of the business. When we started putting this together, Mark said, put something together telling how well your dealers are ready. And I kind of said, shoot, I don't have anything that's going to document that. Our dealers aren't ready. We've been trying to solve that ever since I was a technician. Dealerships are just another place of business. So I threw together some slides, and I think I shocked them when I showed them the data and said, guys, we're not ready. But I'm going to show you a little bit about us. I guess you could say our dirty laundry. Topics I'm going to talk about are we really ready at our dealerships? We have a program, it's called our minimum service training requirements. Do our training standards, how do they affect fixed right first time vehicles, which is customer satisfaction and getting the guy back, trusting your work again. We're going to talk a little bit about our dealerships and how they go about getting technical support from us. There's a fallacy out there that it's real easy. We don't make it easy. And then lastly, I got a little slide to talk about the fact that we need technicians just like everybody else. So with that, are we really service ready? We started a few years back trying to figure out how we could improve our customer satisfaction. You know, everybody, you see all the CSI reports out there, J.D. Power that ranks everybody, and we seem to always be down there in the middle of the pack. Nissan and Infiniti, trying to figure out what do we do to get our customer satisfaction up for our service. And we use what we call F1, which is fixed right the first time. And what we started looking at is more than likely most of the problem is our technicians aren't getting the cars fixed the first time. Our technicians struggle like everybody else with the technology we got. So what do we need to do as an OEM to try to get our technicians to increase their knowledge, get our dealerships thinking a little differently? So we put together what we call our minimum service training requirements. I got a typo at the bottom, but you probably can't read that anyway. But we started tracking it, and we set up a program for our technicians to be able to tell whether our guys are getting the training or going to training, whatever it is that we need them to do, we had the ability to track it. Surprisingly enough, roughly 65% of our dealerships actually have technicians that are qualified to our level of satisfaction to work on our cars. That's not a real good percentage when you think of OEMs are supposed to be 100% all the time. We're supposed to have everything perfect. Well, we don't. One of our constant battles is attrition. We have, in our training programs, we have some specialty areas that I'll give you a quick review on. But basically, we've put together some data for calendar year 12, and we looked at guys that had been to some of our major top categories, advanced electrical, OBDs, NVH, and automatic transmission. And to actually get to that level, of course, they had to go through a lot of different classes. So this is kind of a highlight. And what this chart shows really is how many technicians we trained in calendar year 12 under those 4 categories. The red and the green show our Nissan and Infiniti breakout. But what the purple showed is actually we're losing technicians as fast as we can get them. We lose an average of 29 techs a year after we've gotten them trained. So we get them to our highest level, and then they move on from us, too. We're not going to discuss where they go, but they do leave. So we get them trained, and then they move on. A little more detail about our minimum standards. We now have a system in place or a process requirement for our dealers that when you hire a new technician, within 45 days, you have to have completed a technician orientation program. So once that dealership signs that new technician, new employee up in the system as an authorized service technician at one of our stores, he's got 45 days to pass this orientation in order to be eligible for any other kind of training. And so this has got us where our guys had to go back and start rethinking. When we launched this, we made our master technicians go back and go through this program. It's part of the certification requirements. So that the dealership owner knows he's got to get those new guys trained, and if he brings in somebody from somewhere else, they have to start right there. And it's all electronic-based, e-learning type stuff, online training. Same kind of training programs that we have actually available to anybody in the aftermarket. You can buy those programs from our website. I'll show you a little bit more detail about what's in that class on an upcoming slide. And we also put together what we call our shop competency level. We started thinking about how many technicians at each dealership should be certified up to a level in 4 major areas. And those 4 areas are electrical, engine specialist, chassis specialist, and driveline specialist. And on the black column to the left of that chart on the bottom, I guess we got a pointer here, but I'm sure you can see that. The left side there, that actually is just how many technicians the dealership have. So if I'll go to the bottom one. If a dealership's got 11 to 13 techs, we want at least 5 of those to be fully certified as an electrical specialist, 4 of them as an engine specialist, 4 as a chassis specialist, and 2 as a driveline. So we set these standards to try to make sure that these dealers would get up. And of course, the first slide I showed you is they're not there. Only about 65% meet the qualifications. And it's not that stringent of a qualification. It's just getting people to go to class, getting technicians to stay on board, and getting people to cover the time to send them somewhere. It's a challenge for us. This slide shows a little more about what our orientation program is. And this is just our base requirements. We want to make sure they go through a technician, the bottom kind of really shows some of that, but we want to talk about how to use our assist system, our Automotive Service Information Support Terminal, how to run our consult diagnostic software, how to do a pre-delivery inspection, what's the effect on fixed right the first time. We give them some electrical fundamental. We make them go through that stuff, and it's all online training. And if you wanted to mirror that in some of your shops, if you were specializing in Nissan, you'd be able to go right to our website. We've got videos on it you can buy, you can look at. So our guys go through and read this to become just the base. That's just the base requirements. Does having a guy trained actually impact your customer satisfaction? Yes, it does. This chart is one we put together. Our management really wanted to see, you're pushing our dealers to get all these guys trained. Is it really going to help us with our customer satisfaction and fixed right? So our training department put together some data, and this was really kind of interesting. If you look at this chart, on the left-hand side is our fixed right first-time scores. And then across the bottom is the percentage of our dealers that are actually fully qualified to do the work. And those guys that have full certification and are meeting our minimum standards, if you look to the right, the higher the percentage, the better it is to fix cars, the better results we have. So training and having technicians and meeting our standards, we know will improve our fixed right first time scores, which will improve our customer satisfaction and should hopefully help us sell more cars. So having your technicians trained and having a structured program is very important to achieving customer satisfaction. This is a repair process. I think later on in the program, you guys there are other presenters are going to talk a little bit about what's available to the aftermarket side. On the OEM side, on the Nissan side, we have our assist support terminal. A lot of you have probably been to a Nissan dealer and are aware of it because you're specialists in the industry. But we utilize a system. I got a red arrow that you may not be able to see it up there. But up in that corner, does this thing look? Yeah. We have a tech line access code system. And our telephone system for a dealer to call us requires them to have an access code to get to a body. We don't just have an 800 number and somebody picks up, can I help you? He has to have this access code that will get him into the system. The only way you can get the access code is to go into our service information and either have looked at bulletins, looked at service manuals, in other words, done his due diligence to research and try to fix it himself first. We recognize that most guys that call are looking for a silver bullet. They just say, tell me what part to put on the car. That's a lot of phone calls. We average over 300 a day from our dealers, and I venture to say that over 50% are, which part do I replace? Please help me. One of the things we are now doing, we're launching this actually next month. We've been building a way for our technicians to actually get into our technical information database that our in-house tech line group uses. And they've got all this information and techs call and say, do a database search for me. Okay. What's been replaced? We are now going to go ahead and say, you go ahead and get into our database and you do your own looking. Stop calling me and asking me to search for you. What we're going to do is take our tech line access code away from just the information side, and every technician before he calls us will have had to run a database check himself. Only call us after you've done all the research that you want to do, then we'll give you a live body. So we're not making it really easy for our guys. We want them to think. We want them to use the resources, do everything they can to fix that car without getting on a phone and waiting on us to try to figure out what they may have not done. So that's kind of how we go about our level of making sure that, of a technician actually getting help. We try to make it a little difficult, not as easy as what you may think. The last slide I've got here is again a study done by our training group. We were trying to get enough technicians as car sales grow, and of course we all hope our sales grow. We've got some big expectations for our dealers, and can they handle it? Do they have the capacity? Do they have the service technicians they need? Right now we're having trouble keeping up, and this chart really is a simple chart. When we did this study for calendar year 11, we were short technicians. For the capacity we needed, for the volume of repairs being done with our units out there, we were short over 600 technicians in calendar year 11. So trying to get technicians into our industry, trying to make sure that people realize this is still a great industry to be in, finding qualified ones from the programs like GM has with AYES and everything, it's a challenge for all of us. We're all fighting for a small pool. The more we work together, hopefully, we can keep our customers happy and keep this business rolling along.